In 2005, Dennis Rader's taunting letter hit a floppy disk that police overlooked, until a forgotten clue finally exposed the BTK killer's identity. On February 16, 2005, a plain white envelope arrived at the Wichita Police Department, addressed to Detective Lieutenant Ken Landwehr. The return address was a nondescript P.O. box, and the envelope bore no markings that would raise immediate suspicion. Inside, investigators found a single sheet of lined notebook paper, its edges slightly curled from handling. The handwriting was unmistakable, the blocky, all-cap style that had accompanied Dennis Rader's earlier taunts to the media and law enforcement since the 1970s. The note read, in part, "I am BTK. I have been watching you. Here is a gift for you." Beneath the text lay a small, 3.5-inch floppy disk, its label handwritten in the same meticulous script, BTK, 2005. At first glance, the disk seemed like another macabre souvenir, a trophy the killer liked to leave behind as a psychological ploy. Detectives, still reeling from the cold case's decades-long silence, placed the disk in evidence without examining its contents, assuming it held nothing more than a blank medium or perhaps a corrupted file. The letter itself was filed alongside the dozens of previous correspondences, its significance diluted by the sheer volume of material that had accumulated over 30 years of BTK's reign of terror. Little did anyone suspect that the innocuous piece of magnetic media would become the key that finally unlocked the identity of the man who had eluded capture for over 3 decades. The story of Dennis Rader's 2005 taunting letter, the secret message that broke the BTK case, Wichita, Kansas, began like any ordinary day, until it wasn't. Phone records told a story the suspect denied. Witnesses who spoke on camera asked to remain anonymous. Years later, armchair detectives still debate the verdict. The autopsy report raised questions no one wanted to ask. The story of Dennis Rader's 2005 taunting letter, the secret message that broke the BTK case, Wichita, Kansas, began like any ordinary day, until it wasn't. Phone records told a story the suspect denied. Witnesses who spoke on camera asked to remain anonymous. The floppy disk, measuring just under 4 inches across, was a relic of early personal computing, a storage medium that held a mere 1.44 megabytes of data. In 2005, many police evidence rooms still treated such disks as low-priority items, especially when they appeared to be blank or unreadable. When technicians first attempted to read the disk using a standard drive, the system reported that the media was unformatted, prompting the assumption that the disk was either damaged or intentionally left empty as a taunt. No one thought to run a deeper forensic scan that could reveal hidden sectors or deleted files. The disk was logged, shelved, and largely forgotten amid the mountain of paperwork, photographs, and other evidence that filled the BTK case file. It was only months later, when a rookie analyst revisited the evidence as part of a routine audit, that the disk was pulled from storage for a second look. This time, the analyst noticed a faint magnetic signature along the edge of the disk that suggested data had been written, then partially erased. Curiosity prompted a sector-by-sector examination, which uncovered a hidden file system containing a single Microsoft Word document. The discovery was accidental, but it set in motion a chain of forensic steps that would ultimately expose the killer's identity. Investigators catalogued every piece of evidence twice. Forensic analysis contradicted the official narrative. Timeline reconstruction placed key events minutes apart. One detail, buried in the report, changed everything. Detectives followed a trail that led somewhere impossible. Investigators catalogued every piece of evidence twice. Forensic analysis contradicted the official narrative. Timeline reconstruction placed key events minutes apart. The hidden file, named btk.doc, contained metadata that proved to be the fatal slip. When the document was opened, the program displayed the usual author field, but a closer inspection of the file's properties revealed something far more telling. The XML embedded within the Word file retained the original author name and the organization associated with the computer that created it. The metadata showed author, Dennis, and last saved by, Dennis Rader, along with a path that pointed to //documents and settings / Dennis Rader / my documents //. Additionally, the document's creation timestamp matched a date in early 2005, coinciding with the letter's mailing. This digital fingerprint was invisible to the naked eye but readily accessible to any forensic tool capable of reading extended file attributes. The realization that a seemingly innocuous taunt carried such a detailed digital trail was a watershed moment. It demonstrated that even a killer who prided himself on anonymity could leave behind electronic breadcrumbs when he used modern technology to communicate. The metadata clue was the forgotten piece that investigators had initially overlooked, but once uncovered, it provided a direct link between the floppy disk and a specific individual, turning a cryptic taunt into actionable intelligence. Witnesses who spoke on camera asked to remain anonymous. Years later, armchair detectives still debate the verdict. The autopsy report raised questions no one wanted to ask. The story of Dennis Rader's 2005 taunting letter, the secret message that broke the BTK case, Wichita, Kansas began like any ordinary day, until it wasn't. Phone records told a story the suspect denied. Witnesses who spoke on camera asked to remain anonymous. Years later, armchair detectives still debate the verdict. The autopsy report raised questions no one wanted to ask. Armed with the metadata, detectives launched a targeted investigation into Dennis Rader, a name that had surfaced peripherally over the years but never risen to the top of the suspect list. Rader, a compliance officer for the local park department and a church council president, led a seemingly ordinary life in suburban Wichita. Investigators obtained a warrant to seize his personal computer, a Dell desktop located in his home office. Forensic examiners performed a bit-for-bit image of the hard drive and compared it to the data recovered from the floppy disk. The Word document found on the disk matched, byte for byte, a file residing in Dennis Rader's My Documents folder, complete with identical formatting, embedded objects, and even the same hidden metadata. Further analysis revealed that the floppy disk had been formatted on Rader's machine, and the file had been copied to the disk using the standard save as function. The timeline established by system logs showed that the document was created, saved to the floppy, and then ejected, all within a narrow window on the morning of February 14, 2005, 2 days before the letter was mailed. This irrefutable digital correlation eliminated any reasonable doubt. The taunting letter and its hidden disk originated from Dennis Rader's own computer. The forensic link was solidified when investigators also recovered deleted internet cache entries showing Rader had researched floppy disk suppliers and consulted online guides about hiding data on magnetic media, underscoring the premeditated nature of the taunt. Timeline reconstruction placed key events minutes apart. One detail, buried in the report, changed everything. Detectives followed a trail that led somewhere impossible. Investigators cataloged every piece of evidence twice. Forensic analysis contradicted the official narrative. Timeline reconstruction placed key events minutes apart. One detail, buried in the report, changed everything. The decision to include the floppy disk in the 2005 letter was, in retrospect, a catastrophic miscalculation for Dennis Rader. Up to that point, BTK had cultivated an image of an untouchable phantom, communicating through cryptic letters, phone calls, and occasional media. Appearances that never revealed concrete personal details. By attaching a piece of his own digital workflow to the taunt, Rader inadvertently handed investigators a forensic Rosetta Stone. The disk transformed a psychological game into a tangible evidentiary chain that could be traced back to a specific machine, a specific user, and ultimately a specific person. Moreover, the act of sending a floppy disk in 2005 demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of how rapidly technology had evolved. While the medium itself was outdated, the data it carried was still fully readable and traceable. The taunt, intended to rekindle fear and assert superiority, instead provided the breakthrough that ended a 30-year reign of terror. In the annals of criminal investigation, the BTK case stands as a stark reminder that even the most meticulous offenders can be undone by the very tools they employ to facilitate their crimes, especially when those tools leave behind immutable digital footprints. The autopsy report raised questions no one wanted to ask. The story of Dennis Rader's 2005 taunting letter, the secret message that broke the BTK case, Wichita, Kansas began like any ordinary day, until it wasn't. Phone records told a story the suspect denied. Witnesses who spoke on camera asked to remain anonymous. Years later, armchair detectives still debate the verdict. The autopsy report raised questions no one wanted to ask. The story of Dennis Rader's 2005 taunting letter, the secret message that broke the BTK case, Wichita, Kansas began like any ordinary day, until it wasn't. The BTK floppy disk episode offers several enduring lessons for modern criminal investigations. First, never underestimate the evidentiary potential of seemingly obsolete storage media. Floppy disks, zip drives, and even old CDs can retain recoverable data long after they are considered obsolete. Second, metadata is a powerful investigative asset. File properties, embedded author information, and system logs can reveal identity even when the visible content is innocuous or misleading. Third, maintaining a rigorous evidence review process, including periodic re-examination of cold case items, can uncover clues that were missed during the initial influx of material. Fourth, cross-disciplinary collaboration between detectives, digital forensics experts, and cybercrime units is essential to interpret electronic evidence correctly. Finally, investigators should cultivate a mindset that treats every piece of correspondence from a serial offender as a potential Trojan horse, anticipating that the killer may embed hidden signals within seemingly benign objects. The BTK case illustrates that integrating traditional detective work with cutting-edge digital forensics can close cases that have languished for decades, turning a killer's arrogance into his undoing. Detectives followed a trail that led somewhere impossible. Investigators cataloged every piece of evidence twice. Forensic analysis contradicted the official narrative. Timeline reconstruction placed key events minutes apart. One detail, buried in the report, changed everything. Detectives followed a trail that led somewhere impossible. Investigators cataloged every piece of evidence twice. The story of Dennis Rader's 2005 taunting letter is more than a true crime footnote. It is a cautionary tale about the permanence of digital traces. What began as a cruel joke ended with the handcuffs clicking on a man who believed he was invisible. As technology continues to evolve, the BTK case reminds investigators to stay vigilant, to question every piece of evidence, and to remember that even the smallest floppy disk can hold the biggest secret.